Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. It is Colli from Collitalks Transformative Conversations, and I want to wish everyone a very safe, fun, joyous, loving weekend in preparation for what a lot of people still celebrate called Christmas. I celebrate it, and I will always celebrate it. So, this tonight for me is very special. And, as I always say, we're going to go deep. Well, tonight's no exception. I just am who I am. And I happen to be, you know, an investigative person. I always have been. I do a massive amount of research and I really like to get to the bottom of things. So, today, tonight, this morning, this afternoon, good evening, we are moving from what I call the trauma map of the past and the trauma industrial complex of the present to the internal source of your future. I think it's a good time to do that, being as we are almost at the end of 225, and I don't do, resolutions and all these other things because there's a whole nother story. But today, this morning, this afternoon, what we're going to talk about is something that, happened to me when I was 14 years old. And that was my mom passed away. And as you know from previous conversations, I wasn't with my mother for the first 6 years and then I returned to her. And then, of course, at 14, for me, she was 41, she passed. It really was a shattering loss that stripped away the normalcy of my world, and at that time, I didn't realize the effects. I had no idea. And, Christmas was soon coming, and wow, that December, while everyone around me was caught up in the frenzy of Christmas shopping and gift wrapping, I sat down and I wrote an article for the local newspaper. Yeah, I was only 14, but I saw something that adults seemed to be missing. I wrote about the children who weren't being fed. I wrote about the families who were struggling to survive while the rest of the world was worrying about the perfect gift. It isn't really that much different now, except it is because we are in a very intense collective trauma period where fear is the continuum. And so a lot of families are really hurting right now. A lot of families, forget about wrapping a gift. They're just concerned about putting food on the table. So I'm going to fast forward to 220. I was contracted to be the face of a national awareness campaign for domestic abuse. And that slogan was called Face the Issue. Now, it was very interesting how that all came about. My face was on TV, billboards, and telling the world to look at the reality of abuse. But here's the truth. At the exact same moment I was telling the world to face the issue, I was privately navigating my own escape from hell that had lasted for many years, but especially starting in 217. I was telling everyone to face their truth while the system was harvesting mine. You see, we often use excuses to cover the truth, right? But those excuses are the fuel that keeps a very specific machine running. Now, in my years as a doctor of integrated systemic trauma, I have realized that most of our social issues, political, addiction, divorce, homelessness, they're not separate problems. They are the same storm system. And the fuel for that storm is unresolved trauma. The world doesn't want you to heal your trauma. It really doesn't. It wants to harvest it. So this is what I call, you know, welcome to the trauma industrial complex. And this is a system that doesn't need you dead. No, it just needs you dysregulated. You see, a regulated person is harder to exploit. A healed person is harder to hook. Hear that again. A regulated person is harder to exploit. A healed person is harder to hook. A connected person is harder to sell fear to. A connected person is harder to sell fear to. So, we've built a society that prioritizes management over healing because management is billable. Trauma isn't just a memory, it's trapped survival energy. It's a nervous system trained on danger for so long that it mistakes peace for threat. It's a nervous system trained on danger for so long that it mistakes peace for a threat. And that's reliable, profitable dysfunction. The hypervigilance, the numbness, the shame is exactly what the box of our culture is designed to maintain. And it's a pressure cooker, right? It's a pressure cooker. That is why the holidays are actually dangerous. They are the peak season for trauma industrial complex. The world demands perfection, but beneath the glitter and the influencers and all the people doing all their wonderful magic through AI and through all their magic through facial reconstruction, if it's necessary, no problem. But the anti-aging industry, right? It's all about the roots are rotting there. Because you see, for many women and children, this isn't a sanctuary, it's a trap. And I know this because I have lived it. I lived it. It- Years ago, I reached my breaking point. I just didn't, you know, face the issue on a billboard. I faced it by walking through the doors of a woman's shelter. I remember the weight of that moment, the feeling I had lost everything. But in that shelter, I found the bread, the nutrition. I found the safety that the trauma industrial complex could never give me. If you are listening to this and you are afraid, hear me. A shelter is not a sign of failure. It is a fortress of truth. It is where you go to stop being billable to a toxic system and start being accountable to and for your own life. You know, it's very interesting. I've been doing a lot of traveling and I'm about to go again, not for traveling for pleasure, but for work and a little bit of pleasure, I will admit. And recently I drove through the city where I was talking about that hell took place. And even though now I'm a doctor, I felt an immediately overwhelming sense of disorientation. And in my clinical work, I call this the trauma map. Astrologers use this for people needing to relocate. Well, this is a trauma map, and your brain is a master cartographer. You see, when you go through intense survival, like I did, when I needed that shelter, when my nervous system, was labeling those streets as crime scene, the trauma industrial complex wants you to stay stuck on that map, repeating the same loops of rage and shame and guilt and blame. If I could have, I should have, I would have, I could have, I would have, I should have. But the first step to healing is realizing that you are not the map. Hear that again. The first step to healing is realizing you are not the map. That's right, one more time. The first step to healing is realizing that you are not the map. So, how do we break the loop? How do we break that loop? Well, we return to the internal source. At 14, I knew that the bread of truth mattered more than the boxes of expectation. And now at the age I am, I know that if a place feels like a grave, I don't have to live there. I don't have to stay there. I am choosing a different map. Right now, I'm choosing to go away in January and February to work in a place that I am so looking forward to, but I'm choosing this. I don't have to go somewhere I don't want to. I'm choosing the mission that's in my book that is now with an editor, which is amazing. So if you are feeling discombobulated or maybe lost today, check your map. Never attribute to malice what can be explained by unresolved trauma. That's not an excuse. That's a diagnosis. And once you have the diagnosis, you can begin the cure. You're not a loser because you felt the weight of your past. You're actually a warrior who is learning to redraw the boundaries of your own safety. The harvest is coming in 2026, but for now we face the issue. We drop the excuses and we feed ourselves the bread of truth. I'm Colli Christante, Dr. Colli Christante. And remember, a regulated soul is the only thing the system can't sell. You will always have you, and that you are is enough. That's right. A regulated soul is the only thing the system can't sell. You will always have you, and that is you are enough. So for now, I am wishing all of you a very, very, very safe, fun, joyous, loving Merry Christmas. And you know what? The best gift you may give is realizing that a regulated soul is the only thing the system can't sell, and that you will always have you, and and you are enough. So for now, enjoy and lots of love and soul hugs. Until next week, bye bye.